Why do you sound like Hoovy? Good morning, everyone. I was trying to think of something to do this week for a video and realized that I really needed to put the carbs back together for the Goldwing there, but assembling carbs is never a super good video. It's just taking this bucket full of parts and making it less of a bucket full of parts. But I did think a way to make it a little bit more interesting. I've got about 30 comments that I've selected here that I will be responding to while I go through the process of reassembling the 4 carburetors for my Honda Goldwing. So let's dive right in by showing what I'm working with here. This rather heavy assembly is all 4 carburetors attached to a plenum for my 1987 Honda Goldwing. I took it apart, cleaned it out, and now I'm going to put it right back together again. Not gonna get it back in the bike tonight, just going to get it reassembled and ready to go. I just blasted everything out with carb cleaner. Quite a bit of stuff actually came out of here. These things were pretty gross, and at least one jet was pretty clogged. So I'm just gonna start off here with the pilot screws because those are the smallest and most finicky parts. What I also have here is 4 genuine Honda carb soft part kits. This is all the gaskets and stuff that you need. That's part number 1601-MG9-691 there. There you go. There's my credentials all sorted. So I'm gonna get one of these opened up. Actually, I think I need to open up all these right now since I'm gonna be starting right away with the smallest O-ring in here. So like I said, this is all the tiny parts right off the bat. This tiny little O-ring is gonna go on an equally tiny little screw. So what I have in my hand here is the pilot screw. It's very small, and on that goes this spring, and then let's see here. Then after that goes a tiny little washer so the spring does not bite into the O-ring. There we go, and then the O-ring goes on last, and it'll also kind of hold all of that together. So we've got the screw, then a spring, then a washer, and then the O-ring. And that just goes, it's gonna go right in here. And I'm gonna do that with this sideways so that that all does not fall apart. I'm gonna screw this in until it's basically finger tight. And I'm gonna back it out 1.5 turns. If you need tools, just borrow them from JR. And then John Ross replies, yeah, I think he wanted an excuse to buy things. Yes, always an excuse to buy things. Always in search of that retail therapy serotonin. Okay, so that's all the way in, and then gonna back it out. 1.5 turns, and then repeat that 4 times. I think I'm actually gonna go carburetor by carburetor here. I'm gonna do the bottom first, and then move on to the next one. So next up on this carb is going to be the jets. I've got the main emulsion tube with the big jet already installed, and I've got the secondary jet. Those just screw in, nothing to it. In they go, run them down. Next comment, you should film when you go on a parts run to the store. I don't know, that idea I never quite liked that much. I don't like the thought of putting a retail employee on the spot like that. You know, kind of some people might be uncomfortable with filming. I don't like filming in public for that reason. Conflicts pretty heartily with my social anxiety. So I got those 2 main jets installed. Now is for this large brass piece here. This is the fuel fill, and you can see it's got a little plastic filter on it, which is disgusting. So we're going to take that off and throw it away. And then we're gonna dig into our bag of Honda Carb rebuild parts. We're gonna grab a new filter. These are the only non-rubber parts in this kit. There's a new filter and the washer that also seals, that seals this brass piece up against the aluminum. So this little filter is just gonna go right there on the tip, maybe, kind of a tight fit. Trying not to break it. There we go. All right, that's in. Washer goes on, and then this is installed with a 10mm right underneath where the float goes. This is what the float needle sits into, so it's important that it is clean so that that float needle is able to seal. Otherwise, the carb this is going to overflow and you're in for a bad time. The issue with the quad core combustion is without proper fission, nothing will occur on the quantum radar, which means no spark from the mainframe ignition fueled by a 50-50 diesel methane mixture. Yes. So for this, I don't know if there's a torque spec for this, but I just kind of give it a little bump. And I think that's probably fine. And that's actually 3 parts. It's the float, the needle, and the little dowel pin that the float rotates on. Just kind of visually inspect your needle. Aftermarket float needles are never as good as the OEM ones, so it's best to reuse this if possible. There's no grooving or anything on mine, so I think I'm good to go. Floats, no leaks or anything, and you're fine to use those as well. Depending on the bike, those can be absolutely impossible to find secondhand. Kind of set the needle in there, and then it all just sort of falls in place. What is your real job? IT, actually. I've been working in IT for like 5 or 6 years. Before that, I actually worked in the automotive industry. I say that. That's a really pretentious way of saying I worked at some dealerships. I was a mechanic at one, I was a lube technician at another, and I did photography at another one. And as you can see, I'm still kind of doing the photography thing, just not at dealerships. That was a soul-sucking job. So now that I have the float installed, I'm going to do what's called a pro gamer move. Nobody ever does this when they rebuild carbs for whatever reason. I'm going to set the carb float bowl height. So you're going to take some calipers and you're going to set them to the recommended carb bowl height, which in the case of a GL1200 is 7.5 millimeters. So I'm going to lock that in. Now I'm going to use this little dingus in here. I'm going to take my carb assembly, I'm going to tilt it so that the bowl is free swinging. And you can see there, it's just completely free swinging. I'm going to move this until it stops right there. I'm going to go from the flat part where the bowl mounts to the float itself, and that is exactly 7.5. If you go like this, gravity will pull it down a little bit more. You want to go right until it's just barely touching, because that's roughly where the gas is going to push it to. And that just makes sure that the level of the gas inside the float is correct. Now it is time for the bowl and the bowl gasket. What part of Kansas? Near KC or actual Kansas? I have a black 900 Super Sport SP, hit me up. Wichita, Kansas. So actual Kansas, I guess. KC, Missouri doesn't count. Black 900 SSSP, and you're called ICT Living, so I'm guessing you're in Wichita too. Dude, definitely hit me up. I definitely want to meet other old Carby 900 SS people. Okay, so I've got a carb bowl here. Let me just pick my old, uh-oh, it's kind of in there. Where's my knife? I definitely don't recommend using a knife for this, but gross. This thing is hard as a rock. This is where the expensive carb kit comes into its own. This thing fits just wonderfully. Just gonna go ahead and push it on there a little bit to seat it. It basically just drops into place. And then the sort of annoyance here is that it kind of has to be installed like this. So I've got to flip my carbs over. Here we go. And then flip it back over. Something that I'm kind of skipping here is that usually you want to replace these fasteners just because they're kind of junk by this point. I'm going to do that later, which is why I'm not fully cinching them down right now, and also why I'm using the wrong screwdriver. I'm using a Phillips instead of a Japanese industrial standard. Dry humor is the best humor. Duh. Skimmed through both channels. Meh. Looks like a lot of clickbait. Welcome to YouTube. The algorithm likes it. I want people to see my stuff. I want people to benefit from it. I want to see what they have to say about it. So why wouldn't I do something that's essentially free and gives my videos a wider reach? Sounds like a no-brainer to me. It's an 05 to 07 Focus with a 2-liter Duratec. Spend 10 seconds Googling before going on camera. So this is about the Focus in the Hoovy video I was in a couple weeks ago with the Secret Santa thing. Yeah, I knew absolutely nothing about those cars. I opened it up and I was like, oh no, I've got to try and say something intelligent about this, like I know what I'm talking about. I thought those had the Z-Tech. I guess they had the Duratec. I was thinking of the earlier ones, I suppose. I do like those new Edge Focuses. I always thought they looked kind of cool, and for some reason a lot of people convert them to rear-wheel drive with V8s. Apparently they're just kind of really well laid out for a rear-wheel drive swap, which is super cool, but I never really researched them all that much. I thought an SVT would be neat, but I never got one. You just seems like you're really not good at this. You just seems like you're not all that great at English, frankly. Next part's pretty easy. It's reinstalling the slide and needle assembly. I didn't really disassemble this because I had no reason to. The needle was really clean. The slide was pretty clean. I did just kind of give it a little bit of a washing and made sure that there were no holes in this diaphragm, because if there are, it's not going to run very well, and they're very, very expensive usually. So make sure the needle goes back down through the emulsion tube, and then make sure that it's clocked correctly. A lot of the time there is a little recess in the carb body. It sort of clocks the whole assembly. Some of them have flat slides and other goofy stuff. These are just cylindrical. Looks like he just woke up and decided to make a video. No thanks, kid, go away. Well, I did just wake up and decide to make videos. Oh, let's see here. J&J Auto Wrecking says the 4T65 HD isn't a bad trans, it's just generally totally neglected by its owners. Slap a shift kit on it and get it with some Dex 6 and an external cooler and you'll be golden. What's interesting is that this argument for a General Motors transmission is pretty similar to the argument I make for BMWs. They're not terrible cars, they've just got some pretty unfortunate owners that don't want to take the necessary steps to make sure they stay on the road. Why do you sound like Hoovy? Can't tell if this guy is being sarcastic or not. Lol, I love it. Yes. Why am I jealous? I don't know, probably my hair? Yeah. You talk exactly like the guy from VinWiki, Ed Bolian. No? Okay, that is actually one carb assembled. Oh, I just put that cap on the wrong carburetor. Oh well, so we got a little bit ahead on one carb. Carb number actually won this time. I'd say you look between 38 and 42. I wish my insurance was as cheap as a 38-year-old. You are even better at this than Tyler. Good job. Those gauges are terrible. I love them. Oh, this is referring to the gauges on the Park Avenue Ultra. They have this weirdly fancy font for what they are. And yeah, they're just kind of like genuinely, like objectively terrible, but also kind of the most charming thing ever. Excellent, another person who is actually addicted to the word actually. One of the worst things about editing yourself talking all the time is that you notice all of your verbal tics and you come to absolutely loathe them and yourself. Time to break out another carb kit. Yeah, that's all that we really use for it is the filter, that O-ring, the super tiny O-ring, and the bowl gasket. The rest of this stuff is for if you're actually breaking this apart into individual carburetors, which I'm not doing. Pilot screw number the 2nd coming in hot here. Let's see. Excellent. Okay, feeling good about myself. Let's get this in. And Panzer Ace says, you look kind of like a beatnik. What? Okay, that's that pilot screw. All set. All right, time for some more secondary jets and the main jet and emulsion tube / jet holder. Bipolar Bear says, I get an automotive version of LGR vibe from this guy. Hey, that's actually a pretty good compliment. I like LGR a lot. He's in his mid-20s. Yes, needle seat. There we go, got our filter and whatnot. Screw that in there. And Smokes GTP says, the transitions lenses help achieve the oldness vibe too. Hey, listen, I'm lazy. I just want to wear one set of glasses that do everything. I've been cursed with bad eyesight, so might as well make the best of it. Frankly, I don't understand why people hate these so much. Take a look at our needle here, looks good to go. John Mead says, don't really think that you're a biker. I mean, I've got bikes. New gasket. Man, that is just spot on. EKW says 91 octane is premium out there? Yes, it's the middle of nowhere. Our gas is all terrible unless you have an airplane. Specialized 500 says, what a load of junk. I don't remember the context for this, but I'll just assume that he's right. Sir Boops says, I hate everything about this. A+. We got that bowl wrapped up and we already did the top. Well, we get to undo the top of both of those because I forgot to put the slide springs in. Cool. And David Zermino says, at first I found your personality a little strange. I mean that in the sense that it seemed like you didn't care, but it's growing on me and I dig it. What a weird compliment, but thank you. Don't forget your springs. Spring goes in, cap goes on. Pip says, 928s are squirrels. I'll take your word on that. John Polderman says, all of this. I agree. The lack of cruise control on those first-gen Insights is kind of a miss, especially since it's for the American market and we have lots of straight roads. And even though it is meant to be a city car, it's a pretty fair assumption that some people would want to take it on road trips, or they'd have, a slightly longer commute. And it seems more fuel efficient to me to have cruise control to help you keep a consistent speed instead of, having to catch back up with your previous speed. Okay, that is 2 out of 4 carburetors all done. So I guess now we move on to this side and we'll start with a pilot screw. 3/2 of a turn out. And Crazy Messina says, so much whining and complaining. The fact that you think Scott Kilmer is a solid source of info just tells me how much, quote, success, end quote, you're going to have. I don't think that I've ever used Scotty Kilmer as a reliable source of info on anything in my life. But yeah, there is quite a bit of whining and complaining here. Some people build their whole careers off of it, like Scotty Kilmer. O Space G says, late model BMWs are only good if you can work on them yourself, otherwise you'll spend thousands a year in maintenance cost. I think that's pretty much any old neglected car. Once they get to a point, you've basically got to know how to work on it yourself. Like getting this Goldwing back up to snuff, you could have bought one already running for how much this would cost, which is why I don't ever fix these up for people, because by the time I've invested 12 hours into the carbs, the timing belt, all the other stuff that it needs, you could have just gone on Craigslist and bought one that doesn't need all of that. E46s are the same way. And Gutter Guy 720 says, Buc-ee's has an outstanding Mountain Dew flavor called Goji Berry. Well, I guess I need to go back to Texas. That does it. That sounds amazing. There it is, just touching. And that is right on the money. And Marlene Sanchez says, try Rock Auto someday. Yeah, Rock Auto is great. I just don't advise it for stuff like the BMW. When there's a supplier like FCP Euro that exists that has that specializes in that thing specifically, it's going to be more expensive, yeah, but the parts are just more quality. There's only like 2 or 3 manufacturers that actually make stuff that you want for those E46s. Everything else is just kind of cheap junk. No Stick People says, as seen on Cars and Bids, Doug DeMuro is a sellout. For what? Starting his own business? Yeah, man, whatever. I guess that makes every business owner a sellout because they sell stuff. I'm actually going to remember the spring this time. Sometimes you sound like Doug and Hoovy. I don't get it. How do I sound like everybody? No highs, no lows, yep, it's a Bose. I never really understood this. Every Bose that I've ever listened to had plenty of high end and low end and kind of scooped mids, which from an audiophile standpoint, not ideal, but like it's for a car. Suman Biargi says, I love bass. Yes. Okay, that does it for the comments. I'm just going to wrap up this last carburetor, and then this thing is going to be ready to go back into the Goldwing. And that's going to be hopefully a little later this week. If I'm able to actually get it done, we'll see. I'm expecting that that's going to go about as well as everything else has gone so far. But until then, thanks for watching.